I have many tough acts to follow after all those great talks, so this is really great to be here, and Josh will come up in a minute and talk to you a little bit as well. So my name is Rita J. King, and I remember when I was young, I got a lot of career advice from well-intended adults who told me that I needed to find something I was really good at and then just do it all the time, which horrified me because I just wanted to do whatever I wanted to do. And I never had a nest egg. I put myself through college, and I've always really liked hard work, so that was never a problem for me. But it was a problem for me to figure out what I was going to do once I paid my way through a theater and philosophy degree, which may not have been the best way to spend my own money. People tried to persuade me that I would never work, but I'm happy to report that I have, in fact, worked a lot. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit today about the day I figured out what that thing was that I was going to spend the rest of my life doing. It was actually a child who said to me that I was the only adult who made her feel like her imagination didn't have to die when she grew up. And so I dedicated my life at that point to creating a future in which kids' imaginations don't have to die. That's pretty much it. From that point on, I have done a lot of different things. I am an investigative reporter. I'm an expert in the nuclear industry. My actual specialty is called technogenic disaster, which sounds really serious, and it is. It's things like what happens when the robots we've programmed foolishly come back to haunt us, or what about all that nuclear waste that we just keep piling up next to the reactors? Well, Fukushima has taught us what happens when we don't think about that. And ironically, I will note on a journalistic note that Fox News has had me on frequently to talk about Fukushima, which is very interesting to be on the O'Reilly Factor when you're known for being a liberal, lefty reporter. So a couple of years ago, after sort of adventuring around, and I'll just backtrack a little bit after college because that will be relevant to you guys, I graduated from college. I decided that I would drive from New York to California, and my car kept breaking down across the Deep South, and I'm not sure if any of you have had the pleasure of having New York license plates in the Deep South, but it was really a nice education for me. And I decided when I got to Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I ran out of money to fix my car, that I would stay there because I went into a bookstore, which back in the day, it's what we used to do when we were feeling crazy. And I heard that AOL was opening a call center, America Online. And I thought to myself, I should really learn how to use the internet. I was an artiste in college. I didn't think I needed computers, and this was back in '96. And I thought to myself, I'll get a job here, and I'll learn how to use the internet. So I did. On the second day, I had to quit because they wanted me to be a tech, and I know that you don't know me that well, but you do not want me on the other end of the line if your computer's messed up. So I quit, and they said, well, we have a better job for you. And they didn't call it a vulgarity censor, but that's what I ended up being, which is a great job for a Brooklyn Italian. And they asked me to create a manual of all the vulgarities I could think of, so I brought my manifesto in and plunked it down the next day. And so began the month of monitoring the other humans on the internet using America Online, and that also was very educational. At the end of the month, I left, and I ended up writing a cover story for the Village Voice about my experience a few years later. So that story launched me into a position of becoming an expert on digital anonymity and the digital culture and how people use it. And that article was really sort of a runaway hit. And suddenly I became an internet expert. And it was really, really fun and really interesting. So that brings me to the next thing that I would advise you all to really think about, which is serendipity in your careers and in your lives. You don't know where things are going to lead, as you mentioned during your talk, but you know if you do nothing, nothing's going to happen. And so very often we're put in the position in life of having to think ahead and to imagine what's going to happen, when in reality none of us have much of a sense of that at all, although you can start to imagine better and better. And so when I decided to start focusing on imagination as my thing, I didn't just want it to be fancy ideas that we think about when we're daydreaming in the hammock, although I do like to spend a lot of time doing that. I wanted it to be collaboration. How can we imagine things together and actually make them real? And the internet is an amazing tool when it comes to that, because there's a lot of rapid prototyping that goes on. Ideas fail, and you move on to the next thing, which is how I met Jerry and also Josh Fouts, who has worked with me on many projects, including the one you see here, Imagination, Creating the Future of Education and Work. So I'll backtrack 5 years and tell you how Josh and I met. We met in a virtual world called Second Life. He was a 7-foot-tall green avatar with blue dreadlocks. I was a 7-foot-tall version of myself, tweaking different features. My hair never got frizzy in Second Life. It was great. And we started collaborating together on a couple of projects, one of which was called Understanding Islam Through Virtual Worlds. And Josh will say a couple words about that when he comes up. Josh was at the time running a think tank at the University of Southern California, and he is a cultural relations visionary unlike any I've ever met. He understands people. If you land with him in Bangkok, he'll be speaking Thai to the waiter by the time you're ordering dinner. And do you speak Thai? Well, I heard them speaking in the cab, and he just picks it up. So he's amazing to work with, and he understood the digital culture unlike anyone I'd ever met. And so we worked on that project across 4 continents in the physical world. We got to interview people from 25 different countries who are either interested in Islam or are themselves Muslim. And we learned a lot of interesting things, such as if you're in a virtual space, which imagine if this room was virtual but in 3D and we were all avatars, and it's a mosque. Do you have to take your shoes off when you come into the mosque, even though it's a digital mosque? Because in the physical world, we expect people to do that. And if you wear a niqab in the physical world, are you expected to do that in a virtual world, even though you're not actually covering flesh? So a lot of questions arose during that project, and then we segued together to Imagination, Creating the Future of Education and Work. This project took us 2 years, and we traveled across the United States trying to understand what was happening with the educational system, which is, as many of you know, completely falling apart, and at the same time, not preparing students to actually work in the future, which is really tragic and very scary as the United States continues to fall behind competitively, and other countries understand technology much better than we do. We're very good in the United States at arguing 2 binary views until we do nothing either way, and calling that freedom, but that's not freedom. And so we wanted to understand what we could do to make recommendations that educators could immediately, at no cost, making no changes whatsoever, other than just adopting these ideas, they could put into the classroom immediately, would not conflict with the cherished American practice of standardized test taking, and at the same time would allow the students to gain skills that would employ them, such as being able to code, being able to understand that they are actually in a position to educate their educators more than students have ever been before. So this project began in the Cajun region of Louisiana with a group of students who were creating games that had social importance. They were in a $27 million virtual facility that was a complete anomaly in the landscape, this giant luminous egg. And they were led by a group that wanted them to understand how to create games. And at that point, I'll turn it over to Josh to tell you a little bit about this project.
So here we are in Louisiana, Lafayette, where my cholesterol level was bursting out of my shirt, and this group of middle school and high school kids who had never spoken before in public, who had never designed or built a computer game before, who had never taken a graphic design class, were thrown together in this immersive, and by that I mean they were going to learn on the fly, project where they were all going to build, they were tasked with building computer games. They were taught some rudimentary computer programming skills, but basically they were able to use an off-the-shelf online program, which is now no longer exists, to build these games. And they basically chose their own roles. One person was going to have to be the producer, another person was going to have to be the director, another person was going to have to be the art director. And they knew that at the end of the 10 days that they were going to be building these games, they were going to be interviewed by rock stars from the video game industry who were being flown in from Austin, Texas. So this was a serious thing. And the other serious thing was that they didn't get to choose the topics that they had to make. They were assigned topics, and those topics had to be topics that had to deal with real issues. In Louisiana, as many of you may or may not know, it ranks the lowest of all of the metrics out of all the states. Rita says that I think if it wasn't for Alabama, Louisiana would be the Mississippi, Louisiana would be the lowest ranking state in terms of metrics. That means that they have the worst obesity rates, they have the worst healthcare conditions, they have the worst environmental conditions, etc. And we've seen that state and that region being buffeted by environmental crises and chemical crises and what have you. Anyway, these kids are very palpably aware of the conditions in which they're living and that their peers are living. And so they took building video games about healthcare issues and obesity and dietary and the environment and all these topics actually really seriously. And fast forward to the end of their game design week. The rock stars from Austin, Texas were flown out. They were all wearing black turtlenecks and aviator glasses, and they were intimidating to anybody who would have been in the audience, even grown-ups who were used to pitching video game ideas to industry veterans. Add to the fact that these video game designers took their assignment of basically grilling these kids as though they were 25 or 30-year-old or 40-year-old video game veterans extremely seriously. So 14-year-old kids come up to present their game. One of the games that they had designed was a game called Whack a Nutria. If you're not familiar with this particular rodent, the nutria is a prolific sort of beaver-shaped, water-dwelling rodent that can be found throughout the Gulf Coast. And one of the game designers said very precisely to one of the kids, so tell me, how is it that the whack-a-mole designers are not going to sue your asses off for having violated their copyright? And the kid adjusts his tie, is about 4'6", and goes through a 6-point explanation of how he was not violating copyright in any way whatsoever. Other kids came up and did other things. But what we saw was that when these students of any ages were empowered with the responsibility of doing a grown-up task in a way that was exciting and meaningful to them, video games, which all of them loved, they approached that responsibly. Now I'm going to pass back the baton.
Thank you. So the Imagination Age is about 5 years old now, and it's been funded by a mix of public and private sources, universities, think tanks, businesses, and it has gone through a lot of incarnation. It's gone from being a theoretical framework into an actual action framework. And at this point now, Josh and I are both working for an organization called Science House. I'm the executive vice president for business development. Josh is running the foundation. And the goal of the foundation is to spark the imaginations of kids worldwide for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and arts. And the Science House works on projects also all over the world. And so we continue to develop the Imagination Age. We invite you all to participate with us in some way. And if you have any questions, I know we don't have a lot of time left. I know you guys have had a lot of talks today. I'm happy to take a couple of questions if you have any. And I just want to tell you in parting that you really can create whatever you imagine. It takes a lot of hard work. Nobody ever said it was going to be easy, but you'll be shocked along the way, as Jerry said, as a lot of the speakers said today, at the people and the things that manifest in your path to help you actually achieve the most outlandish things you could possibly imagine. And that's what the Imagination Age is. It's a fleeting period between two longer eras, the Industrial Age, which is rapidly fading behind us, and the Intelligence Era, which will not really commence in earnest until machines are smarter than us, which is going to happen soon. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to take a couple, and thank you so much for being here.